Video is part of the October 9th remote session where we've really been learning about selections. And we'll conclude the video, demonstrating a few, but really focusing on the interplay between selection and field calculator. And as such, I'm going to show you a couple of more advanced techniques with field calculator that allow you to sort of pair it with selections and then even go beyond that and really start showing some sort of fascinating ways to leverage the Python scripting language there to really customize and sort of pull apart your attribute data to give you some new stuff. So if you're following along, I'm using the Chicago streets data, and I'm just going to create a couple of fields here, maybe just one to start. And I'll call it text hold. And it'll be a text, it'll default to 255, and I'll come here and hit save. Give it the time to do its thing. Good. All right, so I've got it here towards the end. And I'm going to drag it with me, so I can see it next to some of the fields that I want to process. So I'll drag it over first so that it's in front of the class field. So the first thing I want to show you when we field calculate and selection is how they're often sort of paired together. One of the most typical uses of sort of the selection field calculator combo is when you'll have some data that is maybe numeric, or in this case, ordinal, where one is, or two or four are texts, right? And you can see that they're text because they're justified on the left, but they represent something, or nominal, right? One represents a highway, two represents, I think, the next class of road, three is so on and so forth. And you may want to actually include that sort of in your data so that when your users are playing around with it, they can quickly and easily see, what's a highway versus a feeder road without knowing sort of the class system. And so you could pair them for that work. You could come over here to select by attribute. And it'll pop it up in a second. Say Chicago streets. I want a new selection. And we're going to select where class, once you find it, is equal to 1. And there they are, right? Those are sort of your main highways. And so I can right-click then on the text hold category that I made for this purpose. And say calculate field. Double quotes, meaning I want text, say text hold equals the main highways. And if I sort of jump to that selection menu here, right, I can see there, the ones that I've selected I've called now main highways. And you could just sort of interplay those back and forth, over and over. Go to select by attributes and say streets, new selection, and this time, class will be 2. Right, and oh, look at that lovely little grid pattern. I don't know, so we'll call them maybe main boulevards or something. Again, I'm just making up. I'm not sure exactly what those are, but that sort of appears to be what those are. And so that's the point I wanted to draw there, is that select and field calculator really work well together in allowing you to sort of select and iteratively enter information in field calculator. Now, interestingly, at the conclusion of this video, I'll actually show you another way to do what we just did with an advanced technique down here in code block, where you could even sort of avoid the selections altogether and just use if statements. Right, that'd be the same concept. If you said if the value is 1, then you should return main highway. If it's 2, main boulevard. If it's 3, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But for now, this should be sufficient. So we're going to stay in field calculator here for a second. I want to show you a couple of other sort of techniques. So I'm still on text hold. My language is Python. And one thing that we didn't really talk about previously, but is worth sort of showing, is how you do sort of pushing concepts together. Right, so if I were to take, for example, the direction, the street, and the street type, and enter it into the text as one consistent unit, I could do that using pluses, right? So plus, even though that is something that supports addition when you have numbers, it also allows you to concatenate text, right? So if I were to take prefix direction, and maybe I say plus quote space quote, meaning an actual space. And then the next one would be plus street name, plus quote space quote, plus type, and run it. You know, Python's language doesn't view this plus as incongruous, right? It doesn't look at this and say, wait a minute, I can't add, you know, the word av to the word, you know, Bronzeville. What it's seeing is that plus to it means concatenation. So this is the way you take multiple pieces of text and you would bring them together. And the cool thing is you could even start engaging that with texts as well, right? So if I see sort of, where's the thing I want? Right, if I see this field called sort of logic or RT, like the right from seems to give me the start of the street, I could even make this like the blank block, right? The 7300 block of this avenue. The only difference being that since this is an integer, I'd have to convert it first, right? But I could easily do that, right? I could keep this text all the same, but maybe start out by saying it's str, which would mean the string. Oh. Yeah, it's str. It might be string, but I think it's str. Str of, we'll say rf add, right, from. So it's going to take that number and turn it into a string. And this time we'll say plus the word block. Looks like I lost street direction somewhere. Oh, there it is. Didn't lose it. It's just right here. So the string of the address plus, let's put a space in front of the block, plus space block, and we'll do plus the direction again because I lost it. And then that direction will be plus a space, plus the street name, plus a space, plus the street type. Unless I screwed it up, which is definitely possible. It should be running this right now, and we'll be taking that sort of number that it found here, right from add. And interestingly enough, it will turn that into a string, right? Turn it into a text so then I can use it. So this concatenation technique I'm talking about here, it can also be used with things that are numeric that you might want to turn into sort of a text or a category. And there we go, right? I should put a space between block and direction, but I didn't. But if I would, it would have looked nicer. And there you go, right? We have the certain block of blank, 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 blank. Cool? So there's some other techniques I want to show you that are fairly advanced here that are these helpers that I think come in handy quite frequently. And I'm going to demo a couple of them to you. A lot of the most important helpers are ones that that allow you to sort of pull apart text-based fields. So, for example, right, if I'm to come into here, you know, text hold, and I were to use one called replace, right? Replace allows you to sort of replace one thing with something else. And I'm going to demo a few I think are important here. And then I'll make note towards the end of the video, I don't expect you to learn Python in this class. This is just borrowing from the Python scripting language. So when and if you want to explore this beyond what I show in this video and what you can also find on the YouTube channel, you'll want to sort of get yourself a Python writing guide. They're easy to find online because I'll just remind you of the syntax, like what needs to follow replace, what needs to follow, left strip, what needs to follow sort of upper for be able to work until you actually build something in your muscle memory. But let me show you sort of theoretically how this works so you can get a sense. So I could take the same field, and this is a neat trick of Field Calculator 2, is I can calculate an existing field. What if I were to say, hey, take yourself, but replace, notice the field comes first, then a dot. To my field, I'm going to replace, and replace always goes, what do you want to replace? Well, I want to replace AVE. What do you want to replace it with after a comma? Maybe avenue. And what it'll do is it'll find all the instances of AVE and turn it into avenue. Again, it's working through a lot of fields. Maybe I should select something so next time is a little easier. But it'll work through, and in a moment we'll sort of see how the replace worked. So in a moment it'll flash, and there we go, right? The avs have become avenues. So that's a super useful field, right? The ability to take a value maybe and replace it for everyone. Perhaps if something's not reporting correctly or is sort of hurting your ability to join. Pretty solid one right there. I'm also going to, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to just very quickly select a couple so that the next few go a little bit quicker. The other ones that I think are sort of interesting that you might use, where is it? Upper or lower. The purpose of upper and lower is just to sort of put everything in uppercase or in lowercase, right? So if I were to sort of take text hold, oops, how you doing? And do a dot upper, I don't need anything at the end of it, and run it, you'll see for these ones right here, it'll turn the blocks to upper and the avenue to upper. Everything else is already uppercase. Why is that useful? Well, that's a joining thing, right? If you had two IDs or street names or neighborhood names that were identical, but one was uppercase and one was lowercase, they wouldn't join to each other. And so that's often a reason why you will use that. Title is the same thing, except title puts the first letter of every word as an uppercase. So there's a couple others that you really could play with here. I won't go through too many of them, but let's sort of count the number of characters in something. That can be sort of an interesting point. Words like ends with, if you need to test if something has something at the end. Find, if you're looking for sort of where in a word the first instance of a character appears. Is alpha, is digit, is a way of testing, does something only have numbers in it, that's is digit, or does it have sort of, does it have letters as well, or other characters that may be hidden. But a really other good one, if you want to play around, probably the most useful one that I'll frequently sort of play with is split. And split is a super useful field that allows you to take something and literally split it at a character. So for example, if maybe I didn't need the address anymore, I just needed it to say blocks, blank blank avenue, that would be exhausting to go through here and manually sort of delete all of the first things. But I do notice that there's always a space, right? There's always a space between the address and the rest of the street name. And I could take advantage of that. I could say, hey, text hold dot split. And it's going to want to know a couple things, right? It's going to want to know where are you splitting at first is what's in quote. So I want you to split yourself at a space. And then depending on how you end it, you put a bracket at the end with a number inside. If you put 0, like the 0th character. And this is a whole other bag of worms with Python about what 0, 1, 2, and 3 mean in terms of sort of sequence of numbering. And so I don't want to get into that today. Just know that 0 in this instance means what's to the left of the split, and 1 would mean what's to the right. So if I were to say 0, I would bring back 6228, 7300, so on and so forth. If I put 1, I'm saying bring me back everything to the right of the split. And so then when it runs for these, just those ones I have highlighted will disappear and come back. All right, and the interesting thing is it'll then go to sort of the next split. So if I wanted to have been better and bring back the full word, I would have had to put 1:3, right? You know, go through multiple sort of spaces and bring all of them back. So last thing that I want to do here is I want to demo this code block. So the code block is a way to make your calculating functions a little bit more detailed and then reference them up here. And again, this gets into nuances of programming language in Python that we're not going to cover in this class. But I do want to show you what's possible. And those who are interested, you know, I do have certain videos on my YouTube channel, and I can help you find tutorials on Python online so you can get a little stronger with certain how to use stuff. But the main thing with a code block is you always need to start with the word def. Def means define a function. And I'll just call it maybe my function. Now, anytime you use a function, anything you put in parentheses are going to be values that you input. And you're going to enter a variable name that we will then replace with a field later on. So perhaps what I'll say is class. Oh, class is a taken word, so I'll say RD class, road class. Okay? And then I put a colon. Anytime you put a colon and you hit enter, it goes to the next row. So you can see that everything is then subservient to def. I'll make it super simple here, right? I'll put an if function in, right? Define function my class. If, let's say, RD class equals 2, and you put another colon, and I would say maybe return class is 2. And I could say else, meaning, you know, anything else, return class is not 2. So the function, as it's defined, is my function. It needs an input that we'll stipulate up here called road class. And it's pretty simple. If that input is 2, whoops, it needs to be double quotes, or double equals. If the road class is 2, then return the word class is 2. Otherwise, return class is not 2. So what we should see is for this one, class is 2, and then everything else won't. What do you enter up here? Well, you just call the function. Hey, call my function, that thing we just created. And hey, that variable road class, you know, that I'm using as a word road class to hold it, that should actually be whatever value is here. And it'll run through. And then hopefully if Professor didn't screw something up, which he definitely did, cannot acquire a lock. What's my bug here? Unexpected. So sometimes if it's unexpected, a good thing to do is just run it again. Right? Defining my function. If road class equals 2, return class is 2. Class is not. There we go. All right, so anytime you have that, it usually just means ArcPro or ArcGIS is being sort of difficult. But there we go, right? Class is, aha, now there's interesting. What happened? Well, I said if road class equals 2. I was forgetting and treating it like a number, but it's actually a text, right? So I'm going to need to put that in quotes. How do I know it's text? Because it's justified to the left. I'm super happy I screwed up and made that error because it became a teachable moment. So now I'm changing it up. I'm putting it in quotes and saying, actually, if it's 2, right, the character base 2 and not the number, you should say class is 2. If not, you'll say class is not 2. And then hopefully we won't have that sort of error message pop up again. And now we're able to see, boom, right, class is 2. Class is 2 versus class is not 2. So an awesome sort of concept here that you can really create once you learn Python language really advanced code here. You know, you can even start learning different modules, like random is a really commonly used one, where you can call a random number generator to generate random sort of values in your fields. But again, beyond our scope for this class, but I want to show you what's possible with Field Calculator. And those who find the value and the interest of this, please check out some sort of Python tutorials on my YouTube channel, or please connect with me and I can get you hooked up with advanced materials.